Story 1. One guy in our group is really laid back when we are all together, but as soon as another girl arrives, he acts like he's too good for us and talks down to us. He behaves really goofy, almost like a clown, doing weird voices and trying to show off. I don't understand it. Not once has his behavior helped him get a girl's number. Story 2. The person who engages in fighting or wrestling with those who clearly do not want to participate is frustrating. My friend behaves like that, and it is unpleasant. Story 3. When they always attack under the guise of a joke or prank, they become upset when someone retaliates. If you don't like getting punched, then stop initiating the conflict. They want to appear tough, but they are so insecure about their weakness that they can't handle it when it's turned back on them. I don't know anyone, male or female, who appreciates this behavior in a person. Story 4. Bragging about how much money they make or trying to buy people's affection is common. They manage to incorporate it into almost every conversation. I really don't care how many designer handbags you bought your ex, and I fail to see how that's relevant. Story 5. Complaining on social media about how the world is against them regarding things within their control is unproductive. I know one person who constantly complains about not having a car and needing rides. He lost his license due to a driving under the influence charge. I don't feel sorry for him. Story 6. Self-deprecation to fish for compliments. I'm so unattractive, nobody would date me. You're not unattractive. Oh, so you would date me? Story 7. Weaponized incompetence. There is nothing appealing about pretending you do not know how to make macaroni and cheese. Writer. Story 8. I'm an alpha. Being assertive is what makes me manly. I need to be very masculine because anything else is not for me. Story 9. Those random guys on the streets who say, "Hey, beautiful, let me see a smile," are particularly cringe-worthy. From a random person on the sidewalk, it raises the question, what were they hoping to accomplish? She isn't going to go anywhere with them. Story 10. Being completely emotionally explosive. One minor inconvenience and they immediately become enraged, punch walls, scream, and yell like a toddler. Story 11. Trying to be the most dominant person in the room with loud and arrogant behavior is a surefire way to show that you are insecure. There is a way to be authoritative without coming off as an insecure high schooler in the real world. Story 12. Being the richest man in the world, yet begging women through social media direct messages to be artificially inseminated with his sperm and carry his offspring. Story 13. Taking a picture of your hand wearing a Rolex on the steering wheel of a supercar is not appealing to me. I prefer the image of the guy holding the fish. Story 14. Boys in middle and high school, when you say something, and then one boy pretends you said something not even remotely close to what you said to try to embarrass you. I'm kind of sore after that game yesterday. Oh my God. Did you just say you like having sexual relations with guys? What is everyone's problem? Story 15. Talking about all the women they have slept with feels like a contest to appear desirable. In my opinion, it makes them look trashy and insecure. Story 16. I know a man who was diagnosed with autism as an adult. He is a bit eccentric, definitely somewhat autistic, but mostly just quite normal. He developed an entire identity around being an autistic adult, wearing shirts and hats that say, "I'm autistic, please be patient," and constantly bringing it up in every conversation or using it as an excuse for not wanting to do something. One day we were out with some other friends and went to a bar. The bartender accidentally poured the wrong drink and offered it to him. He said, "Oh no, I'm autistic." She just looked at him oddly and walked off. As she was leaving, he exclaimed, "Autistic people don't like change. It's just incredibly awkward." It seems like every third sentence starts with, "as a person with autism." Story 17. Criticizing others' hobbies or tastes in things like music and games to showcase super niche interests is unnecessary. Story 18. Quizzing a woman you're interested in about your mutual interests can make you appear arrogant and diminish her interest in you. It's one thing to say, "Oh, you like comic books too? What did you think of the latest issue?" as a way to keep the conversation going. It's entirely different to ask, "What's the real name of that obscure character who appeared in one issue 40 years ago?" This applies to any type of mutual interest, not just niche topics. A friend of mine was puzzled when a woman turned him down flat after he laughed at her for not knowing who a random individual who died on Mount Everest was. Story 19. Putting down another man to try to make himself look better to a woman in the group is a common behavior. There is a word for this, but I forgot what it was. It happened to me a lot in middle school because I was a gamer who attracted a lot of girls. There would always be that one guy who couldn't make a girl laugh, so he would try to put me down for whatever reason to get her attention. Story 20. Flexing about having a car or the type of car one owns is common. One of my friends, a former influencer and fitness model, mentioned how a guy tried to hit on her at the gym by discussing his car. She replied, "I have a car too." Story 21. Beardy McBeardson individuals have personalities that revolve around their beards. I like beards. I have one. Story 22. The individuals on social media who post videos of themselves listening to music while shirtless and looking sensually at the camera seem to say, "Hey, look at me. I have muscles and I'm somewhat shy." They lick their lips and give puppy dog eyes to the camera. I mean, don't get me wrong, most of them are attractive, but that behavior is quite cringe-worthy to me. Story 23. Loud vehicles. There is nothing cool about driving up and down a street at inappropriate hours of the night and waking everyone up with your loud car. Story 24. People who go through one bad experience and allow it to define their entire life and personality often believe that no one else can understand their struggles, despite the fact that many have their own traumas. Experiences like rejection and heartbreak are simply part of life. They do not justify harboring hatred towards others or adopting a persona that is not true to oneself. Story 25. Interrupting people or derailing conversations because he needs to be the center of attention. Story 26. Bragging about material possessions is commonplace. Although I don't pay much attention to internet subcultures, I find it concerning when men boast about cars, homes, designer clothes, and jewelry. It often comes across as effeminate. Typically, these individuals are not actually gay but believe they represent the pinnacle of masculinity. Story 27. Calling themselves a nice guy when they are not actually nice. They believe that holding the door open for a woman in public means that they deserve gratitude and intimacy from her. Story 28. Heavy grunting and excessive flexing at the gym. You have monopolized the only cable machine for 45 minutes and admired your biceps so much that the mirror quit. Yes, we have all noticed how hard you work out. Now please take your indoor sunglasses, tank top, and cap elsewhere. Story 29. Rich and famous people who donate to charity often have their publicists promote the effort. Just give and be quiet. Story 30. Making a relative's wedding reception all about himself. He ran around on the dance floor, causing a few people to fall while others encouraged him. When it was time for the garter and bouquet toss, he caught both by running across the room and shoving a woman to the floor. Story 31. Filming himself lifting weights at a fitness center and yelling as if he is in a superhero movie. It resembles a gym version of a Kardashian. Story 32. Peacocking. As a male, I find this behavior cringeworthy. When men alter their personalities to impress a woman, they often revert to their usual selves as soon as she leaves. I observe men becoming overly friendly and engaging in exaggerated behavior to attract attention when a woman is present. The dynamic completely shifts. Individuals who typically ignore me suddenly become my best friends for a few minutes. It's quite disturbing. I consider myself one of the few who doesn't engage in this peacocking behavior. I treat women as if they don't exist in the context of altering my behavior. I am happily married and always strive to be my authentic self. My self-assurance is likely a key reason I don't act this way. However, I do notice this behavior, and it reveals a lot about a person. I see this at work regularly. I'm in a male-dominated environment with few women around. Yet, when women are present, people behave as if they've lost their minds. They suddenly act like best friends and make exaggerated jokes to seem amusing and create a reason to smile. The contrast is stark and obvious. Story 33. When they are too nonchalant, I wonder if you really do not get excited about anything. Is nothing important to you? Do you have no opinions? You only respond with phrases like nah and yeah. You do not appear as cool as you are trying to be. Instead, everyone just thinks you have some kind of mental handicap. Story 34. When I was younger, I used to take off my t-shirt at parties to impress the ladies. I still cringe when I think about that. Story 35. Being a gym enthusiast. Suggesting you are not like other women. Engaging with that alpha or high-value male mentality. Assuming any podcast host is worth your time, with an exception for the basement yard. Bragging about wealth or identifying as a finance enthusiast. Complaining about gold diggers while lacking any wealth. Driving excessively loud cars and playing loud music. Playing guitar for you or composing songs or poetry and then reciting them. Confusing controlling behavior with protectiveness. Being self-deprecating to seek compliments. Using baby talk. Seriously, never do this. There has been an increase in men reading romance novels and making it their entire identity, thinking it makes them appealing. It is quite embarrassing. This also applies to men who dress as fictional characters, especially from romance novels. Ryan Reynolds. Story 36. When you are with your male friend or relative and they start criticizing him for simply existing, trashing his appearance or what he is doing, it can feel like they are trying to prove they are better than whoever you are with. This is less common, but I have a teenage son, and when a guy tries to act macho around me about my son, it is the absolute worst. He is my flesh and blood, and you think criticizing him is acceptable? Story 37. Being excessively loud and mocking others to make themselves look better. They do not realize they are making fools of themselves. Story 38. Being an attractive woman at work often leads to married bosses frequently being around her desk with trivial work-related questions or conversations. It's clear that their intentions are not professional. When it's obvious that you want to pursue her and you treat your hardworking employees poorly, you are not just a bad person. You are an even worse boss. Story 39. Grunting and yelling loudly when lifting weights at the gym can lead to injury. While it may seem impressive, it often draws unnecessary attention. It's important to lift weights appropriately and focus on proper form. Story 40. Spending significant time at the gym and then posting numerous shirtless photos online. Story 41. Cannot take a loss and then says, "You're just not competitive enough," especially in video games. I see many people who get upset when the smallest thing goes wrong or does not go their way. I really cannot understand getting so upset. I have been frustrated for sure, but never enough to demean my teammates or quit in anger. It is never their fault either. It has to be something someone else did, bad game design, lag, or hackers. Literally anything but them. I would expect this behavior from children, but I see it so often in fully grown adults. Story 42. White faux spirituality types who claim to be in touch with the divine feminine tend to be the most misogynistic men you have ever encountered. Bonus points if they say they practice shamanism and attempt to teach you. Just be a person. Story 43. Bragging about the violence one can inflict is disturbing. Boasting in kindergarten about being able to beat up other boys is sad and concerning. Bragging in a club about the ability to overpower other men is troubling and frightening. Story 44. I recently experienced the opposite of many of these situations. I went out for 2 weeks with a guy who spoke about social issues and equality. I ended the relationship after 2 weeks because I didn't feel we would be compatible in the long term. It turned out he had strong beliefs about astrology and alternative medicine. Immediately, I was labeled promiscuous and accused of leading him on and causing him pain. In short, it was performative feminism. Story 45. They constantly insert themselves into conversations they know nothing about and try to change the topic to suit their preferences. Story 46. The way they rev their car engines is really loud. Sir, this is a residential area, and we just want to enjoy our walk. Story 47. Not sure how to phrase it, but the way some men act when they know a woman is watching is often trying to emulate what they think are the mannerisms of a tough guy. Any form of tough guy bravado is quite cringe-worthy, whether it involves self-promoting behavior, bar fights, aggressive outbursts, or loud car revving. Story 48. Toxic masculinity often manifests in the need to assert dominance through aggression, whether towards people or objects, and engaging in reckless behavior for attention. However, I do support intervening when a random person helps someone weaker who is being threatened. Story 49. Putting down another man to make himself look better to a woman in the group is a common behavior. There is a term for this, but I can't recall it at the moment. This happened to me frequently in middle school because I was a gamer who attracted a lot of girls. Occasionally, there would be a guy who couldn't make a girl laugh, so he would try to undermine me for some reason to gain her attention. Story 50. Keep following you around. Keep staring at you. Keep making inappropriate jokes very loudly. Trying to touch you by accident. Not taking no for an answer. Not all men are like this, by the way. Story 51. If you're discussing men seeking male attention, it's the Carolina squad. If you're talking about women seeking male attention, it's those girls who post on Instagram with captions like, things in blue-collar trucks that just make sense. Showcasing items such as a log of dip cans in the center console or an old soda bottle used as a spitter. Story 52. He started a fight with his friend to prove how manly he is. He lost. Even if he had won, he still lost. Story 53. One phenomenon I've observed is the push-pull attention dynamic. They pay attention to you just long enough to engage you, then they stop. Just as you're about to leave or focus your attention elsewhere, they pull you back in. As a man, I've experienced this from straight men who, for some reason, seem accustomed to this behavior. It must be exhausting dealing with this as a woman. Unfortunately, it is effective enough that they continue to employ this tactic. Story 54. Mistaking confidence for aggression. Since the dawn of the Red Pill movement, many men have made this mistake, believing that the louder they are and, in some cases, the more they lash out, the more they appear confidently unbothered by others. Only those who fear and feel they have something to prove resort to aggression to dominate. Real men do not need to resort to that. As people say, like attracts like most of the time, though exceptions do occur. Story 55. Overcompensating masculinity involves constantly talking about and attempting to demonstrate how dominant they are or trying to prove that a woman owes them something because they consider themselves superior men. Story 56. Posting Instagram reels, doing all kinds of weird poses, shirtless dances, and looking seductively at the camera while biting their lip. Story 57. Speaking about women in a derogatory manner, using terms like bitches, sluts, crazy, psycho, or gold diggers, demonstrates a lack of self-control in your life. Story 58. Trying to get a man's attention by claiming she is pregnant with his child when it is not true is the ultimate cringe-worthy attention-seeking behavior. Story 59. I've been talking to this girl who thinks emotions and vulnerability are the answer to this question. What do you think about that? Feels very toxic to me. Story 60. People who base their entire identity on one or two things, and conforming nonconformists. I don't subscribe to your societal norms. I dogmatically conform to my subcultural norms instead. Story 61. I go to the gym often. Every time I use the bathroom, I hope there isn't a person posing in front of the mirror. This happens frequently, and sometimes they have their shirt off or take pictures, often in groups. I try not to scoff each time I see it, and the mirror is right next to the hand dryer. Story 62. There is a group of high school boys that comes into my gym. One of them is about 5 feet 4 inches tall and shows signs of little man syndrome. His arms never relax at his sides. They are always positioned in a forward chest flex. He is not very big, which makes it somewhat amusing. Story 63. For me, it's a tie between treating their car and how they drive it as their entire personality and believing in those labels that some people spread online. Story 64. The overconfident leader of the group is annoying. They always talk loudly and act dominant, with conversations focused entirely on themselves. Story 65. Being excessively loud, hooting and hollering, loudly spitting on the sidewalk, and banging the table when your sports team scores is strange behavior. Not only am I frightened, but I am also deeply repelled. Story 66. When they find a way to guide the conversation back to themselves, or do not allow others to speak. Story 67. People have mentioned similar things, but it's when your friend ignores you or behaves poorly in the presence of a woman that it becomes an issue. I call them out on it. Ultimately, all is forgiven, but this behavior needs to be addressed. Story 68. Half of this is behavior that people generally exhibit. I would say it's confirmation bias, but I know it's mostly individuals wanting to be part of something without having any real personal experiences because they spend an excessive amount of time online. Story 69. When grown men admire wealthy individuals, have you ever noticed how they change when they discover another man has money? They become desperate and even refer to him as boss. Story 70. Repeating my jokes but louder. I swear I can't say they just copied me because then it will look like I'm seeking attention. Story 71. 1. Bragging about your ability to drink alcohol is not impressive. Inappropriate photographs. Picking fights as if you are dominant and expecting everyone to be attracted to you is misguided. Story 72. Being alpha or sigma. Though if someone told me they were schmegma, I would hang out with them all night, assuming they didn't stink. Story 73. Using children's playground equipment for pull-ups or competing with your child for who is stronger or faster. Story 74. Lying about height. I was briefly involved with a guy who was a former college football player. He was husky and strong. He just wasn't particularly tall. No big deal. He always claimed he was 6 feet 1 inch, which was impossible since I'm 5 feet 9 inches and noticeably taller than he was when I wore heels. He was so awkward about it, as if height makes someone more masculine. Story 75. Those individuals who post on social media or wear t-shirts about being a wolf or similar themes. The type of shirts with phrases like, "Follow me into battle and kill me if you see me running away. It's important to relax. We are in a grocery store." Story 76. Doing an impression of Dave Chappelle's impression of Lil Jon, 15 years later, is quite embarrassing. Story 77. Being disruptive in a class or learning environment can be frustrating. Some individuals never seem to outgrow this behavior. I am in an electrician's class, and there is a 32-year-old man with 2 children, which reminds me of my middle school experience. Story 78. When they act like they are too deep for this world, posting a black and white photo of their face half in shadow with a caption. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.